The people of France have spoken. Emmanuel Macron will serve a second term as president. Early results show he was reelected with about 58% of the vote. This is the second time Macron has defeated Marine Le Pen in a presidential election. He is the first French president to be reelected in 20 years. Joining us now to talk more about this is CBS News foreign correspondent Elaine Cobbe in Paris. Elaine, welcome. So we have talked before about how U.S. officials were so anxiously awaiting the outcome of this election. Explain what Macron's win means for Europe and for its allies.
Well, Lana, it means they can breathe a sigh of relief. Already the chair of the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has sent her congratulations to President Macron, and across Europe they are breathing a sigh of relief. It means it can be business as usual because he will continue a lot of what he was doing already, although he will take some of the lessons of this race where he did not beat her with anything like the margin of last time around. It's 16 percentage points, which seems like a lot, but when you know that the other side was the far right, it's just not wide enough for comfort here.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, but even before, let's talk about how Macron has been so crucial in the united front against the Kremlin. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how the results of this election affect the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, Vladimir Putin would have been much happier if Marine Le Pen had won because they have links, and many people here feel that she would have been far more in his pocket. She wanted to reach out to him for closer ties for France, even despite the war in Ukraine, where he, having taken on this role as the president of the EU, of trying to mediate and trying to first stop a war and then trying to lessen the damage in Ukraine, he can now continue with that. He will have some time to go back to it. And certainly it means that Putin will not have an ally in the West to rely on, and that could make a big difference to the people in Russia and also just to how the Ukrainians feel. They've already been putting up such a good, strong fight that this may give many of them a boost to say, okay, this is good. It's a relief.
All right. Let's get back to that tight margin of victory. Macron's going to deal with the upcoming parliamentary elections in June. Given that far-right candidate Marine Le Pen received at least 40% of the votes, what are the challenges that Macron will be faced in his ability to govern?
He has a great number of challenges there. She has already said tonight, in admitting defeat, that she is still in the race and she will be working very hard to make sure that her party has a strong showing in the forthcoming legislative elections. And also, he's got to contend with the far left leader who came in third, very shortly behind Marine Le Pen, is already saying he believes his party should have much more of a showing, and his supporters, he's calling on them to vote in the general election for places in Parliament. So he's got a very fractured Parliament up ahead, and he's going to have to work very hard to persuade enough people to get behind his centrist policies, his centre-right ideas, and that means bringing in many of the left and centre-left voters who may well have been part of the many who abstained today.
A fractured electorate. France is also then dealing with inflation, a record amount of government debt that was accumulated under Macron's presidency, not to mention the war in Ukraine. So what do you expect will be the first order of business for President Macron?
He has quite a list to deal with. He has said that he wants to concentrate a lot in this second term on the climate change. So he is going to be looking at increasing France's dependence more on things like wind energy, solar energy, and less on coal, etc. But he's also got to make good on some of the promises he made about raising the pay for teachers and raising the basic pension rate. So he's got there'll be a lot of juggling going on for the next little while as he works on the various priorities that he needs to deal with.
And we do know already how his environmental policies and his clean energy policies actually came back to bite him in this election. Before I let you go, Elaine, the abstention rate was around 28% in this election. That's actually the highest in recent years for France, I understand. Many people cited a distrust for both candidates, and we heard a lot of voters who are holding their nose and voting for Macron. So tell us, what are the bigger trends that you're seeing in French democracy?
Well, the far right and the far left did so well in the first round, and it's very much a fractured country on that level. You've got three groups, if you will. There's far right, far left, and then the centre with Macron. The traditional left and right, centre-right, were decimated, and they will have a very hard time coming back. So it's very much a country that needs to heal as well. A lot of people who voted for Macron did so to block Le Pen, but they're disappointed in him. They're angry that he didn't do more with COVID, even though in general he got a good rating for how he dealt with the pandemic here. But a lot of people felt that he just wasn't in the race early enough, and that he didn't really address the issues that mattered most this time, which was their basic job security concerns, the economy and the cost of living, because everything has become much more expensive and people are very concerned about that. And they're hoping that he'll make good, but they're not entirely convinced that he will. And so he has a challenge to even keep the 58% who voted for him, because many of them will say, you know, not sure we're still with you. That was for this time, but now with the legislative elections for government, we could be much wider.
All right, Elaine, thank you.